In this video, I'm going to show you the most common questions that Next ask in their interviews, and I'm going to help you plan really good answers to these that will make you stand out in your next interview. So let's start with the most common question and probably the most important question to get right, and that's simply, what hours can you work at Next? And to be successful in an interview, you have to actually show that you're available to work at the times that they need, and that's going to really help you get the job. So let's look at how you actually answer this question in the way that they want the answer to sound. So the first thing you have to do is you've got to show Next that you can be flexible. The more flexibility you can show, the greater the chances of getting the job. The next thing is you have to meet their business needs. Let's imagine that you've just been appointed as the manager of this Next store and you're in charge of running the store and you're interviewing someone. Think about the sort of things that you would want people to say and then say those sort of things. I'm going to give you a list of some great things that you can say, which managers do like to hear. Remember, the manager is asking this because it gets them information that helps them make a decision. The next thing you want to do is say yes as much as you can. When you're asked this question, there may be follow-up questions where they say, what about this time and what about this time? And there is a reason why they are asking about these times. The manager has in mind a certain shift pattern and they know the times that they're looking for. So if they're asking about a time, there is a reason for it. And if you're saying no, then your chances of getting the job will go down. The next thing is you have to show that you take your job seriously. If you turn up to a next interview and are asked this question and give them a list of all the times you don't want to work, that's very negative. You want to focus on what you can do and not spend all the time talking about what you can't do and then saying I can do all the other times. That's a very bad answer. The next thing to do is to think about things that Next actually like to hear. If you can say this, the best answer would be to say, I can work the full range of Next opening hours. That is the perfect answer. If you can say that, I would take that phrase to your interview. The next one you could say is, I would be happy to take on extra hours or overtime if needed. That's showing some extra flexibility and a good work ethic. The next thing you can say is, I'm available on weekdays or weekends. So that's showing a wide range of times and some flexibility. You could also say, I'm available during holidays and your busy periods if you are happy to work at those times. Remember that Next's business isn't the same all year. There are certain times in the year where they get very busy and do very large amounts of sales. For example, around Christmas, where sales go very high in January. And then the rest of the year, the sales are still good, but they're not as high as those peaks. So mentioning those peaks is a really good thing to do in your interview. So that's how you ace that question. The next question you really have to be prepared for is, what do you know about Next? And if you turn up to a Next interview without actually having researched the company, your chances of getting the job are going to go down by a lot. So let's look at how you actually answer this question. And also, I'm going to give you lots and lots of facts and some things to say in your interview that will really help you prepare for this. So the way to think about it is to start in the middle of that diagram and then work your way out in your preparation. So start with the basic Next facts, the things that everybody knows, then show that you've actually got some good knowledge of the business. And then what you want to do is you want to build an impressive, well-prepared and confident answer. And you can only get that with practice. So I'll give you the facts that you can take to your interview, and then you want to practice a few times answering this question till you get confident. So let's look at what you say. So the first thing you do is you describe it as a British multinational clothing, footwear, and home products retailer. That is how they think about themselves, and it is a perfect description of what their business really does, what the real core of their business is. Then you can show off a little bit more knowledge by saying that they trade through retail, online, and finance. Finance is actually a really big part of Next business, where people buy things on finance or order and pay later. That's a really important business to them. And just the fact that you've said that is showing a little bit more understanding of their business. They are multi-channel, so they're not just selling in stores, they're not just selling online, they are doing both. They have click and collect, which is a big part of their business, where people can buy things online, collect them in the store, and also their stores process a lot of returns that keeps their business model much cheaper. It's cheaper for someone to return in store and process lots of returns in store than it is to have everything posted back to the distribution center. So that's another advantage their business has. They do a lot of own brand sales, which helps their margins. They have a thing called Next Sourcing that's based out in Hong Kong that sources a lot of their products at very competitive prices. They have owned warehouses, so they're not getting another company in to just run all their warehousing. They actually own their own distribution, which is a real strength of the business. They are very adaptive and innovative. Next has been ahead of the industry quite often and really does adapt to changes very quickly. So you can describe them as adaptive and innovative. They have expanded internationally, so they're not just in the UK, though the majority of their business is. They are expanding more widely. They are now listed on the London Stock Exchange and have been for quite a while. So that's telling you the size of this business. You could also go into the history. They started with Joseph Hepworth and Son was the original company, and obviously the founder was simply Joseph Hepworth. And the company dates all the way back to 1864 in its founding, and they adopted the next brand and the next name in 1982. Those are two good dates to say in your interview. If you want to get really expert knowledge of the company, what I would recommend is you actually read the Next annual report. Next are actually famous for some really, really good annual reports that really clearly explain their strategy, what their thinking is, and how the business works. So take some time. Don't have to read all of it. Just have a flick through it and you'll get a real feel for how this business really works and how the top bosses actually think about the company. And if you do take a little bit of time to read it, say in your interview that you read the annual report. That's a really impressive thing to say in an interview and shows that you actually did some preparation. Lots of people will just turn up to a next interview with no preparation, and you want to be ahead of those people by saying you've done things like reading the annual report. Top tip, very highly recommended. It will really help you ace this question. So let's move on and look at another question, which is why do you want to work at Next? And of course, if you actually want to get a job at Next, you have to have a good answer to this. If they ask you why do you want to work here and you don't have a good, strong answer, it's going to make it harder for you to get the job. So definitely spend some time preparing a really good answer. I'm going to tell you the things that you can say in your answer, and I would recommend that this is one that you bullet point or you write out and learn before your interview, because it's extremely likely to come up and you need to have an answer ready. So the way you answer this is you first think about, what do you expect to enjoy about working at Next? Why is Next the right place for you? Do you have a real interest in fashion? Do you like working with clothing? Do you love working in retail? Do you like interacting with customers? Do you really like the Next brand and want to be part of the Next business? These are things that you could be saying. And I'll give you some more inspiration of things that you can actually use. I would also think about, why is Next a great match for your skills and experience? Do you have lots of fashion knowledge that you could bring to the role? Do you have a real interest in working with customers in retail? Have you worked in retail previously successfully and you want to continue that? These are things that you can think about. So think about your skills and your previous work experience and link that to why Next is the right move for you. You might think about, how could you build a career with Next? If you are ambitious, you can talk about the fact that Next is a growing business and you see there'll be opportunities to grow and progress with the company, and that they offer great training, and that you think that in a few years' time you'll be in a position to move into some more leadership within the company, and that Next is a place that you think perfectly matches with those goals. The next thing to do is answer with enthusiasm. Be really enthusiastic about really wanting to work at Next. If you're not enthusiastic in your answer, it will reduce your chance of getting the job. If you're not answering confidently with enthusiasm, then it doesn't look very good. The other thing you can do is take some of these key phrases I'm going to put at the other side, pick the ones that match with you personally, and you can use some of these. So one that I definitely think about saying is, you can say you're very interested in fashion, if that is the case. You could talk about progression. If you do see yourself working at Next for a long time and you see that this is a good career for you, definitely say that. If you know someone who works at Next, you don't have to name them, but you could say that they have told you that this is a fantastic place to work, for example, and you can share in their enthusiasm. The next thing you could say is, if you had a really positive customer experience and you've shopped at Next for a long time and you really like the brand, definitely mention that as well. You could say that Next provides great quality at a great price and you think that delivers great value to their customers. You could say that the work is very busy and varied. You're going to be doing lots of different tasks, and you like a job where you're not doing the same thing over and over again, and you're doing lots of different, various and varied and interesting work. That's a good thing to say. And if you really like working in retail and you've worked in retail stores in the past, definitely say, I really love working in retail, and link to your past experience. So that's how you ace the question, why do you want to work at Next? Feel free to pause it, actually write out a basic answer using some of the things that I've said, and you'll have a good answer. If you have one ready, you'll be so much more confident, and your answer will be so much better and far better than most other people who just try and make it up on the spot and don't come up with something very good. So do your preparation and you'll do well on this question. The next one they often ask about is, what does good customer service mean to you? So they want to see if you actually understand customer service. My other top tip when you're thinking about this is they sometimes ask different questions about customer service, depends who's interviewing you. The other questions I've seen in Next interviews is about an example of a time you gave great customer service, or a time where you received great customer service. So I would have examples of one time you gave great customer service, unless you're very early in your career and you don't have experience, or also have an example ready of when you received great customer service. So if they ask either of these, you're ready with both answers. So let's look at the what does good customer service mean to you question that is asked quite commonly, or what does good customer service look like? So I'm going to give you a really detailed set of things that you can say, and if you just work your way through each of these, you'll have a really brilliantly detailed answer that will show a good understanding of customer service. So the first thing you could say is that the people working in the store are always professionals and they are reliable. That good customer service starts with friendly and approachable staff, that you're always greeting the customers with a smile, you're open in your body language, things like that, that really make the store much more inviting. You could say that places that deliver great customer service are customer centric, right? They put the customer right at the very heart of their entire culture. So use the phrase customer centric culture. That's one thing that helps an organization deliver great customer service. And it comes all the way from the top, all the way to the bottom. Every single person in that company is focused on providing great customer service. The next thing you say is that good customer service is consistent and that there's always high standards. So it doesn't matter who you speak to in Next, you will receive great customer service. That's what good customer service means. When you go to a company, it doesn't matter who you speak to, the customer service is always good. You could say that there's continuous learning and improvement, that whenever something goes wrong or a customer has a slightly negative experience, you immediately learn from it and make it better in the future, and that you're constantly looking at the store and the experiences of customers and asking, what can we do better? You could say that good customer service is proactive. It's not a case of just customers having to come up to you and ask for help. There's always people on the lookout for how they can help customers better. So proactive is a good word to use in your interview. And then the last thing you could say is that really great customer service is when you exceed customers' expectation, when you go that step beyond, not just doing the basics, not just doing the minimum, but really making them feel very happy, very valued. So it's about exceeding their expectations. That's what really great customer service does. So this is how you answer the question around what does great customer service look like, or good customer service. Have your example of the time you gave customer service that was really good, and a time that you received great customer service ready as well if they ask for examples. And that's how you ace this one. The next one is, what would you do if a customer wanted an item that was out of stock? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a really detailed answer that covers all possibilities. So it's not just suggesting, well, I might go and have a look in the back for it and then it's not there. And well, that's the end of your answer. They may ask follow-up questions. If you say something like, I would check in the back to see if we had it in stock. Then they say, well, what would you do if it wasn't? So it's about having a really, really detailed answer that covers all possibilities. So here is how you answer it. The first thing you say is that you would apologize to the customer. That's always the starting point. Then you would tell the customer that I will do my best to track down the item. So you're not promising that you'll definitely be able to find it, because that might not be the case. But you promise them that you are going to do everything that you can, that you're going to try your absolute best for the customer. And that's a really positive thing to do. Then you also make sure somewhere in your answer you say that you would follow all the appropriate Next policies. So, for example, you're not going to, call up a different store and direct them to a competitor. That's probably not the right thing to do. So you're going to follow all of Next's policies and use what you've been told in training. So you're suggesting what you think you would do, but you're also open to the possibility that Next may have prescribed procedures for this and that you would always follow those. The next thing you say is that you would check if we have it in storage on order. So it may be coming into the company, say tomorrow morning. You might be getting a delivery that's already being sent out, and so it's going to arrive soon. Or if it can be purchased online. So if they could order online, click and collect, pick it up, or if they could get home delivery and they could get their item. The next thing you say is, hopefully I would be able to get the desired product. So your goal is to get the customer the product that they want. That's your number one aim. The next thing you would say is, otherwise I would apologize, offer an explanation of why it's not available. So you could say there's been very, very high demand for it, if that was the case, and it sold out much, much faster than we'd expected. So you're giving them a little bit of an explanation why it's actually not here, which can be quite helpful. And then the last thing you would say, in the case where the item simply cannot be found, it can't be ordered, maybe it's the end of the line for that particular item, you would then say that you would support the customer to find a good or better alternative. So you're still trying to make the sale, you're still trying to get them a product that is going to be appropriate for them, and you're supporting them to do that. So that's how you really ace this question, is go through all of that, and it covers all the possibilities and shows a really detailed understanding and that you've carefully thought about how to deal with this, and that'll get you through this question. The next one is, how would you deal with a difficult customer? So I've given you a ladder with all of the steps that you can follow. So you start by saying that you would understand the causes of difficulty. So you're thinking about what is actually making the customer difficult. Has something went wrong? Has Next made a mistake? Then you're going to react appropriately. The next thing you say is you will listen and empathize with the customer. Then you say you would de-escalate the situation if needed. That means calming the situation down. You would then be clear that you would never argue back or raise your voice. That's called escalation. It's the opposite of de-escalation, making the situation worse. You then say clearly that I would follow all of Next policies at all times. And then overall, your goal is to always maintain high standards of customer service. So if a customer is being difficult, you are still going to treat them with respect. You're still going to be polite. You're still going to be friendly. And you're going to do your best to make sure that that customer leaves happy. So if something has gone wrong, you're going to try and find out what the customer needs to resolve it. And within Next policies, offer a resolution, solve the problem, and make sure that customer leaves happy and has been provided with the best customer service that you can provide. That is how you answer this question. So just go through each of these things: understanding, listening and empathizing, de-escalating, not arguing back, following the company's policies, and maintaining high standards customer service, and you'll fly through this question. The other thing you can say is you can mention the herd protocol if you want to be even stronger, that if you're asked also about a complaint, this is a good one to use, which is hear, empathize, apologize, resolve, and then diagnose. And by diagnose, we mean look at what went wrong in this case and how can we, as a company, prevent this from happening. What was the problem? What can we put in place to stop another customer experiencing this? So if you get a complaint or the customer's being difficult because something bad happened, go to the herd protocol. And that's a great way to answer it. So hear, empathize, apologize, resolve, diagnose. And there is how you ace this question. The next thing you want to be aware of is sometimes in Next stores, they ask you to do a shop floor trial. So they'll take you out onto the store, give you a task to do, and they'll watch you do it. And you may have half an hour just to interact with customers. They may give you a specific job and they want to watch you do it. So I'm going to give you some tips for success here. So the first thing is to make a good impression. Turn up appropriately dressed. So you should be dressed in a formal way that means that you're really serious about this interview. You're going to use good manners and behave professionally. You're going to say please and thank you, things like that. Because if you're not doing it, you will be looked on much more negatively. You've got to behave like a professional. You want to stay relaxed and be confident. That's going to help you be effective. You're going to smile when speaking to a customer. That's one thing they do often look out for. Be nice to other staff. I guarantee you that if you are rude to another member of staff, you're not going to get the job. One of the things that often happens at interviews is this is perhaps in larger companies or companies with offices, but famously, they ask the receptionist, how did the person we're interviewing, how did they talk to you? What was your feeling? And if they say, oh, they were extremely rude, then they're not going to get the job. So it's important to be nice to other staff, because if you're assigned to, say, work with someone, you can guarantee that the manager interviewing you is going to ask for their opinion. So be nice to them. The next thing is follow instructions. So they are telling you to do a task, and nothing angers a manager more than basically the manager saying, can you do this? And then you not doing that, or doing something different. Or if they tell you how to do it and then you do it a completely different way, that's going to really annoy them. And they're going to think, if I'm going to be your manager and I'm going to give you instructions and you're going to ignore them, that's going to be a big problem, and they're just not going to hire you. They're going to hire people that follow instructions. So follow the instructions that you are given. I can't emphasize that enough. The next thing is, you need to act like you really want to get the job. So if you're being a little bit lazy, a little bit slow, you're not trying your best. You may not do it perfectly, but if you're really trying hard, then you're going to be taken a lot more seriously. So these are some tips to pass the shop floor trial. Before we finish, here are some great questions that you could ask at the end of your interview. So they will, at the very end, ask, do you have any questions for me? Or have you got any questions? And if you say no, that's a terrible answer. Make sure you got some ready. So I'm going to give you a basic set of suggestions of questions that you could ask, and then you can choose the ones that match your interests. So you could say, I'm extremely interested in this position. I'm keen to know what the next steps are in the recruitment process at Next. That's a good question, because it'll help you find out what's going to happen next and when you're going to find out if you've got the job. The next one you could say is, could you tell me more about the training and new staff induction program at Next, and show a great deal of interest in your training and development. You might say, do you have any feedback from my shop floor trial that I could use to support my professional development? And this is a really good question to ask if you don't think you did really well on the shop floor trial, because they may think, well, you got a few things wrong, they weren't particularly brilliant, but the fact that they've asked for feedback and that they've listened to my feedback and they've committed to making those changes suggests that they might not be the finished article yet, but they're going to get there, and they really care about doing a good job, and they act on feedback, and that can be really positive. The next one you could ask is, what is your favorite thing about working at Next? And sharing their enthusiasm for it. You could say, if you want to be really clever and ask quite a clever high-level question, you could say, how do you see the Next store estate developing and adapting over the next 5 years with increased internet penetration? So if you want to show off and show that you really are interested in the future of the business and the changing retail landscape, that's a really fancy question to ask. Then, if you can try and make up one question on the day based on what's happened at the interview. And if they ask about various things and you just think, I wonder about that, and it comes up in the interview and you want to come back to that moment, that can be a good opportunity to clear up that with a question. The one thing that you also have to think about is certain questions you should not be asking. So don't ask about moving to another store. The manager wants to staff their store, not another store 30 miles away. Their job is to make this store work. Then don't ask about holidays, taking time off, or delaying a start date. So saying, I can't start for 3 weeks. Well, that's probably going to be a problem, especially if it's the festive period and they really need to get people in. Then delaying your start date is just going to basically end their interest in hiring you. So don't ask about these things, because they can hurt your chance of getting the job. So I hope this was helpful to you and you now feel more prepared for your next interview. Please post in the comments what questions Next asked you and if you get the job. And finally, please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.